Uy, hello! Kumusta kayo? Hello!
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 Musta?
Kumusta kayo? May playlist pala tayo sa Cycle 2, grabe. Mhm.
Oo nga grabe nakalimutan ko na rin yung mga subject dati sa AP.
Ano
No,
tawag dito? Last na aral namin about history, junior high pa, diba? Di ko naman yan na-encounter nung senior high.
ba't ang aga nyo nagising?
Bakit tayo may emergency meeting?
Hello? Ay, si Gloria, hello! Kumusta ka?
Uy, anong meron dito? Ano nangyayari?
Wala, te. Nag-uusap lang kami about sa sa PhilHit. Kasi diba, subject natin sa Cycle 2.
Uy, madali ba yun?
Oo. Diba, Eunice?
Eh,
Gusto nyo kumain kayo dyan ng Spanish bread?
Boy, naalala ko dun about sa Katipunan.
Katipunan?
Gloria, kamusta ka naman? May naaalala ka ba? Ay, wala.
Wala kang naalala?
Ayun! Oh my God! Naalala ko yung kay Ito na nga, inaalala ko pa. Naalala ko yung kay Magellan. Oh my God.
anyway, pag history, like, ang naalala ko lang is yung mga suot nila dati. Diba, yung mga Filipiniana, ganun. Ayun, yun lang yung naalala ko sa fashion nila.
Naalala niyo ba yun sa may biyak na bato?
Buti pa kayo may naalala. Nakakainis naman, di ko.
Alin doon?
Ano ba yun?
Hola, soy Arvinjan F. Camarino, mucha gustos, or should I say in English, hello, I am Arvinjan Camarino, how are you? Today we are going to talk about the chapter 1 of the Loarca entitled Of the Island of Cebu and of Other Islands Under Its Jurisdiction. Now, this chapter introduces Miguel Lopez de Legazpi, the Spanish navigator and governor wherein he is the first to settle in the island of Cebu in the year 1564. The length of Cebu is about 50 leagues and the entire island has 3,500 Indians or the natives living in different parts of small villages in it. The principal villages were under the encomienda, a Spanish labor system. The principal villages are as follows: Jaro, Daraget, Peñol or El Peñol, Taramandik, Barile, Burungan, and Candaya. However, no Spaniards are found in any principal encomienda in all these provinces. Now, Spaniards who inhabit the town of Cebu will receive 2 or 3 small villages each and will be receiving services from the Indians, fowls, and other maintenance. The Spanish named town named Santismo Nombre Jesus, called because of the image of Jesus of the time of Magallanes, had been found, and this is held in the great reverence by the Indians. This is a village of the natives belonging to a royal crown with about 800 Indians, wherein he exempted this community for paying tribute because they had always taken sides with the Spaniards and helped them conquer some other islands. Now, based on the observations on the islands of Cebu, there are about 30 Spaniards residing there and many as encomenderos. However, if we count both citizens and soldiers, there would be 50 or 60 Spaniards residing there. Now, with regards to the resources of Cebu, they only produce a small amount of rice, borona, which is a form of grain, and millet, and little to no cotton. And for that, cloths used by the natives are made from a kind of banana. Now, some sort of cloth that resembles colored karinko, which the natives called as medriñaque. In this island of Cebu, there is an alcalde mayor that governs the island, where this appointed Spanish governor. Now, the alcalde mayor earns a salary of 300 pesos taken from the fines forfeited treasury, wherein he also stated that this itself is not sufficient. There are also 6 regidor that is elected annually. Past governors also appoint alguazil mayor, wherein they could only be removed or replaced at their own pleasure. Now, there are also 2 alcaldes in the ordinary and 1 notary for the cabildo and the public. Now, this town also has the best ports of the islands, the reason why Miguel Lopez de Legazpi founded the first settlement here in the year 1564. This island provide fowls, swines, a few goats, beans, and a kind of fruit that resembles potato of Santo Domingo, wherein the natives call this as camotes. Now, from here on, the islands that surrounds the Cebu is described, including the island of Mindanao, and there are attempts to discover more. However, few was only ventured. Now, the island described was as follows: the island of Matan, island of Bohol, island of Negros, Arevalo, island of Fuego, island of Camotes, island of Baybay, island of Panaon, island of Siargao, island of Macagua, island of Maripepe, island of Limaco Guayan, island of Masbate, island of Bandayan, island of Kapul, island of Biri, island of Ibabaw, island of Bantak, and island of Mindanao. There were 2 attempts to make discovery to explore the chief river of Mindanao, but they're only able to discover 6 or 7 villages. Now, for the next speaker, we would like to introduce Miss Eunice Bermudez.
Namaste. I am Althea Eunice Bermudez, and I will be discussing about the Panay Island. The island of Panay is found 12 leagues from the north point of Cebu and 2½ leagues from Negros Island. Panay is the most fertile out of all the islands discovered for having abundant sources of rice, swine, fowls, wax, and honey, and numerous production of cotton and mandranok. The villages in Panay are built close together. When the Spaniards would get sick, Panay served as a healthful and well-provisioned land where they can recuperate. The natives are healthy, clean, peaceful, and open to conversion. However, the people from Bohol were said to have caused a disease to the Panay natives. In relation to this, the natives claimed that no one from them had ever been afflicted with buboes until the people from Bohol, who abandoned the place on account of the people of Maluco, came. The governor of the island is Don Gonçalo Ronquillo. He founded the town of Arvelo, which is on the south side of the island, where the majority of the people live. The villages are near the town, and the land is more fertile. There are 15 encomenderos who have 20,000 Indians, all pacified and paying tribute. Since it is the nearest to Negros Island, the governor has put under its jurisdiction the rivers Ilo, Inabagan, Bago, Carabcob, and Tecgagwan, which constitute the best district of Negros Island. Panay provides the city of Manila and other places with large quantities of rice and meat. The city has one alcalde mayor, 4 regidors, 1 alguacil mayor, 2 alcaldes in ordinary, and 1 notary for the public and the cabildo. The regidors are elected for life, and the alguacil mayor remains in office as long as does the alcalde mayor. Being a new town, there are only a few lawsuits. This city holds jurisdiction over a circuit of 3 eagles, but possesses no territory of its own. As the island has an abundance of timber and provisions, it has become a shipyard for galleys and fregatas. It was in Panay that the ship Visayas was launched. After this, he goes on to talk about the islands under the jurisdiction of Panay Island. The villages of O-Town, Tikbaguan, Antique, Bugason, rivers of Haro, Ivahay, Ajuy, Harahut, Panay, and Aklan are the principal communities in this island. The island of Imaras is about 12 leagues in circumference and has a population of about 500 Indians, all of whom are in charge of one of the encomenderos in the island of Panay. The island of Cuyo is the opposite of Antique, with about 16 leagues farther in the same westerly direction. This island is also in charge of one of the encomenderos of the island of Panay and has a population of about 800. It abounds in rice, which bears a reddish kernel. There are also many raised goats, large fisheries, and cotton cloth. The Lutaya is an islet. With this are Dehet, Bisukay, Kadnuyan, Takagwayan, Lubit, and Tinotoan. The people are very poor and are kept in slavery by the chiefs of the island of Cuyo. The island of Osigan is found in the northeast of Panay Island. Wax is collected from there, and the population is about 250 Indians living in small villages. The island of Kibuyan is 6 leagues from Osigan. It has about 300 Indians, of whom 200 are under one of the encomenderos of the Panay Island. This island is rich in gold mines, but are not properly worked since the Indians are all pintados, who are very slothful. The island of Boracay is about 2 arquebus shots from the north point of the island of Panay. It is about 3 leagues in circumference and 1/2 league wide. It is inhabited by about 100 Indians who cultivate rice and derive the profit from some goats. The island of Anbil is 1/2 league from Panay. Its 50 Indians are mostly skilled shipbuilders. The island of Simara is about 2 leagues from Tablas, or known as Osigan. It has a population of 150, and these people are traders, goat racers, and hence called Cabras, or Goats Island. The island of Sivay is 4 leagues west of the north point of Panay. There are 70 Indians living in here. The island of Sibilara is about 3 leagues farther and lies about 50 or 56 leagues from the town of Arevalo. The island of Cagayan, a 2 low islets about 15 leagues from the island of Panay, and they are surrounded by many low reefs. These islands have about 400 inhabitants, all of whom are skilled shipbuilders. And that's about it for Chapter 2. For Chapter 3, it's going to be discussed by Matthew Dugman.
Buenos dias a todos, or good day everyone. I'm Matthew Dagman, and I am here to tell you about the narratives of Miguel de Loarca in the island of Luzon and now called Luzon. In this chapter, Loarca claims that Luzon is the most important island of the whole group that has been discovered. Why? Because it is thickly populated and well provided with rice, gold mines, which have yielded much gold, especially in the Ilocos, which will be discussed by Nina in the succeeding chapter of this story. The island is divided into three provinces, Manila being the chief city and the capital of kingdom and settlement of the governor. In Manila, there are more Spaniards found than in other islands. The port of Cavite is where the ships of Nueva España anchor and where ships from China enter to carry out their trading. In Manila, the king has a fortress with a governor, 3 royal officers, 1 major, and 1 royal standard bearer. When we say standard bearer are those who leads the organization. And then all of them are appointed by the king. There are also 3 alguacils mayor, meaning alguacils mayor are those are the sheriff of the municipality, in which one of the court and one of the city, 1 government secretary and 1 notary of cabildo and 4 notaries public. In Manila resides the cathedral church and its own bishop. There are 7 regidors in the city, 3 of them being proprietary magistrates. When you say proprietary magistrates, are those officials entrusted to administration of laws and appointed by the king, namely Captain Juan de Moron, Don Luis Enriquez, and Pedro de Herrera. The other 4, namely Captain Gabriel de Rivera, Captain Juan Maldonado, Captain Vergara, and Captain Rodrigo Alvarez were appointed by the governor. There is also a covenant of Augustinian monks, one of the Discalced friars. Discalced friars meaning belonging to one of the several strict orders of Catholic friars or nuns who go barefoot or wear only sandals. And 1 house of the Company of Jesus. After this, he then goes to describe a little bit of the geography of Luzon, in which he mentioned that Manila has a shore of a large bay, up about 20 leagues in the circumference. The region all about this bay is fertile and well provisioned. The inhabitants are Moros, instructed in the faith by those Verni. The river has a freshwater lake about 5 leagues above the city. It is more than 20 leagues in the circumference. The district is rich in rice and cotton. The people possess much gold in the way of trinkets, but there are no mines in this region. This same race of Moros have made settlements as far as the village of Batangas and its inhabitants. Loarca also compared them to the inhabitants or pintados or the Bisayans. He also talks about the encomenderos, census of each municipality, salary of every encomenderos, to discuss about the life condition of the native people in the Luzon are Moros and pintados. Pintados are the fully tattooed their own body for their culture, and they are the opposite of Moros, which has no interest in designing their bodies. Rice is their primary food. On the other hand, the first census on the island of Luzon by Loarca is that the population of all men in the villages of the entire region was 25,210. As described in the selection, there was no described as to overall population of the woman. That's all. Thank you for listening.
Maray na hapon sa inyong gabos mga kamag-aral at guro. Jeda Castillo ang ngaran ko, and I'm going to tackle the different characteristics and traits of Camarines Province in the chapter 4 of the book of Miguel Loarca. First, let's start with the town of Caceres in the province of Camarines. It is located in the middle of the whole province alongside Pasacao River and Nueva Caceres. It is ruled by an alcalde mayor, 2 alcalde in ordinary, and 6 regidors. The alcalde mayor earns a wage of 300 pesos. There are total of 24 encomenderos in the town of Caceres. 14 has population of 700 Indians each. 1 encomendero has 2,000 Indians, and 2 encomenderos has 1,500 Indians each. And the remaining is about 300 Indians each. From the Pasacao River, following the coast eastward 20 leagues to Bukaygan and 60 leagues to reach Vicor River. There are 8 encomenderos in the River Vicor. 7 of them are in authority to have 700 Indians each, and the remaining has around 2,000 Indians each. They are under an alcalde mayor of Laguna, who, with 3 encomenderos, has a population of 1,500. The villages of Minalgua and Nagua, which has around 2,000 people, is owned by the River Vicor. They use gold, rice, and custom to pay for tribute. The Lake of Libon is a populated town which has around 1,500 Indians governed by 1 encomendero. It is a mountainous region that has creeks that may lead to different provinces. The province of Albay and Bacuyan is composed of 800 Indians under 2 encomenderos, while the Camarines proper has 500 men under 1 encomendero. As far as Mahuban, there came the province of Parakel, which is known for the mines in the base of Capuraguay and island of Catanduanes. It is composed of 2,000 men with 3 encomenderos, but a part of it was owned by a king. The base of Ibalon has 1,000 people with 2 encomenderos. After the Bay of Ibalon, there came the Catanduanes Island, which inhabited 4,000 men within 4 encomenderos. It has an alcalde mayor who gets a salary of 300 pesos. His pay came from the royal treasury, or his penalties were forfeited. Lieutenants who are not strongly needed only in the absence of the alcalde mayor. Its duties are limited, such as attending the mayor's affairs, aiding the city's inspections, with a wage of 400 pesos per year. The island has a treasurer who earns a wage of 200 pesos. It is essential that every year in Manila, he has to collect the tribute and disclose his duties. Catanduanes is naturally rich in rice and palm trees in which they use for wines and brandies. While the natives worships ugly wooden idols, talks to the demons, and they have many wizards. Its natives are similar to the Bentados for being sociable. But the natives of Catanduanes are characterized as more sluggish. Men often spend time drinking and depending on their wives for their character. There is no record that only the provinces of Balete, Casiguran, and Alanao River exist in all the provinces of this island. Alanao River natives are assumed to be proper and depict Casiguran and Balete. Also, they generate cotton and gold. Then, the Cagayan River has the capacity of 30,000. They are bound to an immense number of rice and swine. They own gold, but there are no mining sites wherein they just trade it with the Ilocos. So, near the island of Luzon and opposite of Manila Bay is an inhabited island with 5 leagues of circumference, which is the island of Mandato and Buyon. The stretch of this place are inhabited by Moros. Lastly, the Marinduque Island is an island between Banton and Luzon. It has 1,000 population and governed by an encomendero. The height of this island is 26 leagues in circumference and 8 leagues in width. Finally, the Pintados are natives of Indians. Now we're done discussing the treats of Camarines Province. Our next presenter will be tackling the treats of the province of Ilocos, which will be Nina Cortez.
Dress in short trousers and short sleeve jackets, and they wear a badge that looks like a cross in different colors in the middle of their breast and on their shoulders. Most of them cut their hair short, and by practice, they punish murderers by placing a hold to the crown of their head and taking out their brains. The province of Bolinao has 400 Indios, and some of them reside in the mountains. The other natives are war-loving people. They find happiness in war and cutting off heads. The heads are then hung up in their respective houses, which symbolizes a person being strong, respected, and feared. They believe in God, however, they also ask their dead ancestors in times of sickness and trouble. The Bay of Pangasinan has 6 leagues around. There are peacefully 4,000 people living here, with 6 encomenderos, but only 1 belongs to His Majesty. The people of Pangasinan resemble the natives of Zambales in dress and in language, However, people here are deemed to be more intelligent since they are traders. The people from Pangasinan do traffic with the Chinese, the Japanese, the Borneans, and other natives of other lands. They have great quantity of rice, goats, and swine. Trading and basically commerce is their main source of income. They sell articles of food, for they are good in farming, clothing for miners, and gold used to trade in for Spaniards. Men, being envious of their wives, are given the right to kill them immediately if caught in adultery. Same goes for children, wherein men are also given the right to kill their children if deemed too many to avoid poverty. The island of Lumokake is 3 leagues farther with 1,500 natives. Half of it are under the Encomendero and remaining under His Majesty. They also have similarities to Purao. The villages of Candon are 2 leagues farther and inhabit 1,800 natives under 2 Encomenderos. This village also resembles Purao. The province of Mulawacan is 3 leagues farther. This province is under the Encomendero of Bonbon that has 1,800 people. The valley of Landan is 2 leagues farther, populated by 1,000 Indios who belong to the city of Manila Hospital. The village of Vigan has 800 people under His Majesty. The town of Fernandina near Vigan was founded by Guido de la Vezaris in year 1575. He appointed 6 regidors, 2 alcaldes, and 1 chief justice for Ilocos. The alcalde mayor of Ilocos has a salary of 300 pesos. After Fernandina being plundered, only remained are the Spaniards and the alcalde mayor. The valley of Bantay is 1 league farther and has 1 encomendero with about 1,600 people. Valley of Sinay is 3 leagues farther, that 1,600 populations under the Bantays and Encomendero. The Valley of Vavo is 2 leagues from Sinay, that has 1,000 Indios and 1 encomendero. The province of Cagayan has a population of 4,000. Each encomendero has 2,000, and the other half belonging to His Majesty. The province of Ilagua has 2 leagues farther that is owned by His Majesty. It has a population of 5,000 people who are not peacefully living. 3 leagues farther is the province of Dinglas that has 2,000 Indios and 1 encomendero. The valley of Vicagua has a population of 2,000 people with 1 encomendero. The people of Ilocos are similar to the people of Pintados in customs of eating. However, the people of Ilocos do not eat raw meat. They are known for being humble and peace-loving people. They do not engage in wars. The island of Mindoro is populated by the greater part of Moros. Mindoro is known for good harbor of ships, which is owned by His Majesty. It has 80 leagues in circumference and the inhabitants are approximately less than 500 in number. Some inhabitants are black people who live in the mountain that gather wax. Despite of that, Mindoro is ill-supplied with provisions. The 1 alcalde mayor of Mindoro, Elin, and Luban has 1 encomendero. Alcalde mayor also has the power over Luzon region. The island of Luban is 4 leagues farther in the western part. It has 10 leagues in circumference. It is composed of 6 villages and 500 Indios. The island of Elin has 2 leagues farther in south. It has 7 leagues in circumference and has 2,000 Visayan Indios. The island of Babayanes is in the opposite side of Cagayan River towards China. It was called Babayanes because they got swine from Ilocos.
Maayong buntag. Ako ngalan si Samantha Viclosa and I'm here to discuss and share to you about the Pintados Island. What is the first thing that comes into your mind when you hear the word Pintados? In my report, you will know who are the inhabitants in this place, their culture, and their traditions. Native of Pintados Island are not very dark. Both men and women have regular form and features. They have long hair that is braided on the crown of head. Men are also tattooed in their whole body with different beautiful figures by small irons dropped in ink. This mark incorporates itself with the blood and the marks are indelible. The Pintados are known for being a healthy people. The Pintados are a courageous and warlike race. They have continually waged war on both land and sea. They put holes in their ears in 2 places and place accessory also in their arms and neck. Pintados dresses neatly made in cotton and silk. The Pintados, just like many Filipinos, also loves to drink. They drink wine from rice on palm trees, but unlike us, they have a very good control when they are drinking. In Pintados, men are known for loving their wife dearly because they are the one who give the dowry when they marry. Just like what I said, the men in Pintados are known for loving their wife very dearly. That's why when it comes to disagreement or quarrels, they take side with their wife even if it would cost their family. In their culture, if the wife committed adultery, she will not receive any punishment because of it. But the one who will receive punishment is the adulterer instead the wife. That is why women are not scared in committing adultery during this time. The punishment to the adulterer, their genitals will be put in holes and placed with thin tube that weigh more than ½ pound and they will fasten like a wheel. You can see that there are a lot of differences and similarities when it comes to the Pintados and our culture today. However, the natives of the mountains do not follow this kind of practice. They have their own way and custom of circumcising all of them, for it represents cleanliness and health. When they marry, they are not concerned whether the wife is virgin or not. Women are very fond of perfumes and they dress up cleanly. It is also a custom to them that many children could bring poverty. Just like what I said a while ago, virginity is not an issue when it comes to marriage. They have a custom of marrying in their ranks. You should marry the person as same as the rank as yours. Lastly, men can have many wives as long as they can buy and support them. Now, let's welcome and listen P. Apostol, for she will discuss about the Pintados Island concerning their creation.
Maayong hapon sa inyong lahat. As Miguel Loarca ventured through Pintados Islands and those off in the island of Luzon, he transcribed 2 kinds of people in this island. Although the same race, they differ in terms of their customs and are mutually on unfriendly terms. The ones who live along the coast are the Iligaines, while those who live on the mountains were known as the Punyans. When they are in peaceful terms, they can depend on each other for necessities in life. The Punyans cannot live without fish, salt, and other articles of food, and the jars and dishes of other districts, nor on the other hand can the Iligaines live without the rice and cotton of the mountaineers. In like manner, they have 2 different beliefs concerning the beginning of the world, and since these natives are not acquainted with the art of writing, they preserve their ancient lore through songs which they sing in a very pleasing manner, commonly while plying their oars, as they are island dwellers. Although during their revelries, the singers who have good voices recite the exploits of olden times. Thus, they always possess a knowledge of past events. The people on the coast, who are called Iligaines, believe that heaven and earth had no beginning, and that in the beginning, there were only 2 gods, Kaptan and Magoyen. In their perspective, the land breeze Kaptan and the sea breeze Magoyen were married, and from their union brought forth a reed, which was planted by the god Kaptan. Over time, the reed grew and broke into 2 sections, revealing a man and a woman. The man was named Sikalak, and that is the reason why men since have been called Lilak. The woman, Sikaway, they called Babayes. One day, the man asked the woman to marry him, for
for there were no other people in the world. But she refused, saying that they were brother and sister, born of the same breed, with only one knot between them, and that she would not marry him since he was her brother. Finally, they agreed to ask advice from the tunnies of the sea and from the doves of the air. They also went to the earthquake, who said that it was necessary for them to marry so that the world might be populated. They married and had a son and daughter, namely Sibu and Samar. This brother and sister also had a daughter named Lubluban. She married Pandaguan, a son of the first pair, and had a son called Anoranor. Pandaguan was the first to invent a net for fishing at sea, and the first time when he used it, he caught a shark and brought it on shore, thinking that it would not die. But the shark died when brought ashore. And Pandaguan, when he saw this, began to mourn and weep over it, complaining against the gods for having allowed the shark to die, when no one had died before that time. It is said that the god Captain, on hearing this, sent the flies to ascertain who the dead was. But as the flies did not dare go, Captain sent Weevil, who brought back the news of the shark's death. The god Captain was displeased at these obsequies to a fish. He and Magoyen made a thunderbolt with which they killed Pandaguan. He remained 30 days in the infernal regions, at the end of which time the gods took pity upon him, brought him back to life, and returned him to the world. While Pandaguan was dead, his wife Lubluban became the concubine of a man called Marokoiron, and these people say that at the time concubinage began in the world. When Pandaguan returned, he did not find his wife at home because she had been invited by her friend to feast upon a pig that he had stolen, and the natives say that this was the first theft committed in the world. Pandaguan sent his son for Lubluban, but she refused to go home, saying that the dead do not return to the world. At this answer, Pandaguan became angry and returned to the infernal regions. The people believed that if his wife had obeyed his summons and he had not gone back at the time, all the dead would return to life. Whereas the Tinyans believed that in the beginning there were only the sea and the sky, and that one day a kite, having no place where to alight, determined to set the sea against the sky. Accordingly, the sea declared war against the sky and threw her waters upward. The sky, seeing this, made a treaty of peace with the sea, afterward to avenge himself upon her for having dared to assert herself. They say that he showered upon the sea all the islands of this archipelago in order to subdue her, and that the sea ran to and fro without being able to rise again. They say that from this event arose the custom of Maveris, that is taking vengeance for an insult received, a very common practice in this land, and they consider it a point of honor to take revenge. They then relate also the story of the reed, but they say that the kite pecked on the reed, and the aforesaid man and woman came out. They add that the first time when Kavahi, the woman, gave birth to children, she brought forth a great number at once. One day the man, the father, went home, very angry, and threatened the children. The latter were frightened and fled, some into the most hidden rooms of the house, some hid in other places nearer the open air, some hid themselves within the dindines or walls of the house, which are constructed of reeds, some in the fireplace, and some fled to the same door by which the father had entered. It is said that those who fled to the most hidden rooms are the chiefs of these islands. Those who remain near the outside of the house are the Timaguas. Those who hid themselves in the fireplace are the blacks, and those who fled out to the sea through the open door are the Spaniards, and that they had no news of them until their return. The similarities of the myths are the concept of a man and a woman coming out of a reed, with the difference in regard to the children produced by the first pair. Let us now listen to Samantha Closa, who will report about the belief concerning the dead.
Let's move on to the belief of the Pintados when it comes to the death. It is said that the souls of those who are stabbed to death, eaten by crocodiles, or killed by arrows, which is considered a very honorable death, are going to heaven by way of the arch which is formed when it rains and becomes God, and that the souls of the drowned remain in the sea forever. Belief regarding the death: if those who die from disease are young, the Pintados say that the Mangolos, who are the goblins, are eating their vowels, that's why they die. When it comes to the people who die in old age, they say that the wind comes and snatches away their souls. Those who die, thus the Arayas, a certain alliance of villages, they go to the high mountain in the island of Panay called the Mayas. The souls of the Iligunens who compromise the people of Subu, Bohol, and Bantay are going to the god that they called Sisiburen to a very high mountain in the island of Borneo. They said that there's another god in the sky called Sidapa. This god possesses a very tall tree on Mount Mayas. There, he measures the lives of all the newborn and places a mark on the tree. When a person's height equals this mark, he will die immediately. When it comes to the destination of the soul, it is believed that at death, all souls go directly to the infernal region. Maganitos, which are the sacrifices and offerings made of the god Pandaki in sight of the Mount of Mayas, they are redeemed from Simuran and Siguranugan, gods of the lower regions. When Iligunens die, God Maguyem will bring them to the inferno, but if they are brought to the barangay, Sumpong, another god, takes them away and leaves them to Sisiburanin, good or bad alike. He takes them on all equal terms when they go to inferno. When it comes to the poor, who have no to offer and sacrifices, remain forever in the inferno, and the god of those regions eats them or will keep them in the prison forever. Balens, the native of these islands, are only offering prayer and sacrifices when in case of sickness and in times of seed owing or of war. These kind of sacrifices are called Balens. The one who perform the sacrifices are called priestesses. Priestesses are very brightly with garlands and gold. They will bring some pitarillas, a kind of earthen jar, to the place of sacrifices, and also a rice wine, life hug, and foods, and then the priestesses will chant her song and invokes the demon. After the chant of the priestess, the demon will appear to the gold and will start to enter the body of a priestess. Then, she will declare if the sick person is recovered or not, and also she foretells the future. We all know that during war, a lot of people might die. That's why they offer prayers to the Varangao, who is a rainbow, and also to their gods. Belief concerning the world: the god Makaptan, they believe that the world has no end. They consider God Makaptan a bad god because he is the one who brings sickness and death to the people. Because he has not eaten anything or drunk any pitarillas, he does not love them and instead he kills them. Now, let's move on to a god who lives in a volcano in Negros Island, which is God Lalahon, who hurls fire. The volcano is about 5 leagues from the town of Arevalo. They invoke Lalahon for a good harvest, because when she does not choose to grant them a good harvest, Lalahon will send some locusts to destroy and consume the crops. Now, let's move on to the burials. They bury their dead with gold, cloth, and other valuable objects in their own houses. How they guard the dead. When anyone dies, the people light many fires near his house, and at night, armed men act as sentinels about his coffin. When a slave was killed, the death of the chiefs, when any chief descended from Dumaget dies, a slave is made to die by the same death of the chief. Their mourning was indicated by fasting. When mother or father or any near relative died, they promised to eat no rice until they should seize some captive in battle. When it comes to mourning about the women, this is also the same with the men, but they don't have to kill or captive anyone to be able to be eaten. Instead, they will go to a village with other women and 3 other Indians. And when they reach the village, they exchange invitations with the inhabitants and hold a great level. There is called Laraw of the Dead. When a chief dies, all must mourn him. No one shall quarrel, no gala, no color dress, no singing in barangay, and a strict silence is a must. When it comes to wars, they say that the first man who waged war, according to their story, was Panas, who was the grandson of the first human being. They say that the Panas was also the first one to use weapons in fighting. When it comes to the laws, they said that only the chiefs are defenders and executors and there are no judges. Now, let's move on to Gloria Argagon, who will explain about the treats of the slavery in the Philippine Islands.
Maayong adlaw sa inyong tanan. Chapter 9 of this narrative is entitled, Which Treats of Slavery in the Filipinas Island. Did you know? No Indian is made a slave or is put to death for the crimes they commit. However, each crime they commit is equivalent to either golds or jewels. And if insolvent, they can pledge or can be a slave until they can repay. Moving on, in this island, there are three kinds of slaves, namely, first are the Ayuways. They are the ones most enslaved, and they work for 3 days for their master and 1 day for themselves. Their value is 2 gold pays of labinsyan, which is equal to 12 pesos that time. Second are the Tumaran folks. These slaves live in their house, in which their period is opposite to the Ayuways, since they work for 1 day for their master and 3 days for themselves. However, they don't differ in value. The third kind are the Tomatabans. They work in the house of their master only when there is some banquet or revel. They bring small gifts as well as share in the drinking. Moreover, they are bound to work for their master 5 days in a month, and the slaves are worth 1 day, which is equal to 6 pesos. Other than the kinds aforementioned, there is another type of slavery or lordship introduced by Sidu Magwer, which made its way among all Indians living in the coast except dating Llanes. Provided that crime is an inevitable thing, murder, adultery, theft, and insulting any women of rank or taking away her robe in public and leaving her naked are considered great offense. But in the case of the thieves, them, along with their relatives, are fined for the crime they committed, because if insolvent, they are made slaves, and this law applies to all classes, including the chiefs themselves. On the other hand, slaves surrender themselves in times of famine to be fed. So, the freemen of this island are called real timagwas. They are neither chiefs nor slaves. If he desires to live in a certain village, he must join himself to one of the chiefs, and must, with his weapons, accompany the chief on his journeys. These natives would hold a ceremony to call on their gods and ancestors and ask them the results of the wars and journeys by a method of casting lots with the teeth of a crocodile or a wild boar. While in the case of the captured chiefs, if they were treated well, and if any friend ransomed the captive because he was far from home, the captive returned to him double the amount that his friend had paid for him. For the latter would otherwise always remain a prisoner. When borrowing, they have a stipulated period of 1 year to repay the lent rice, for instance, since it is something that is planted, and if not able to pay, the value of the loan is increasing. Lastly, inheritance was a bit unfair back then, since the property and the slaves can be divided equally to the children. However, if there is a bastard child, he will only receive his part according to the will of his brothers. And if the dead man has no children, all his properties will be left to his brothers. If there is no brothers, all his relatives will benefit equally. Mauraning tanan, daghang salamat sa inyong pagpaminaw. Now let's move on to chapter 10, which is to be discussed by Eunice.
Chapter 10 focuses on the traits of marriages. The first one is the marriage of the chiefs. The man always asks the women. When any man wishes to marry, he calls in certain tamaguas who are respected in the village. There are 3 ranks of men in these islands. Number 1, the chiefs. Number 2, the timaguas or the freemen. And number 3 are the slaves. For the chiefs, they send as go-betweens some of their timaguas to negotiate the marriage. One of these men takes the young man's lance from his father, and when he reaches the house of the girl's father, he thrusts the spear into the staircase of the house. And while he holds the lance, they invoke their gods and ancestors, requesting them to be propitious to their marriage. If the marriage takes place, the land belongs to the go-between or it is redeemed. After the marriage is agreed upon, they go to bring the bride from the house of her parents. The dowry which the husband pays to the wife consists of 100 taels in gold, slaves, and jewels, which are equivalent to 100 pesos. One of the Indians takes her on his shoulders, and on arriving at the foot of the stairway to the bridegroom's house, she affects coyness and says that she will not enter. While drinking, an old man rises and calls silence and makes a speech about the conditions of the marriage and makes everyone as witnesses. After the speech, they would take a dish of uncooked rice, and an old woman comes and joins the hands of the pair and lays them upon the rice. Holding their hands, she throws rice at whoever is present at the banquet and then shouts, "After this, the ceremony is finished." It is also observed that if a man says that he wants to marry someone, then breaks that promise, he will be fined for it. The marriage among the Timaguas does not follow the usage because they have no property of their own. They do not observe the ceremony of joining hands over the dish through respect for the chiefs because it is only for them. Their marriage is accomplished when the drinking pitarilla from the same cup. They give a shout and the guests depart. They are considered married. The marriage among the slaves is a lot simpler than the Timaguas. They marry each other without any ceremony and go-between. Hence, they simply say to each other, "Let us marry." Also, a chief can make one of his slaves marry another slave from another chief of the same class. After the marriage has been arranged, the chief gives a slave an earthen jar or 3 to 4 dishes, but still observes no ceremony. Half of the children of the couple will belong to the master of the male slave, and half of which will belong to the master of the female slave. The process of friendship is also illustrated in this chapter. Reconciliation between those who have quarreled, even though they are not living in the same villages, is brought about by drawing blood from the arms of both parties, and each tasting the blood of another, placed in a shell, sometimes mixed with a little wine, and such friendship is not to be broken. The natives are very superstitious. They had witches and sorcerers as their physicians. They also believed in thousands of omens, such as sneezing as a bad sign, and praying to gods and offering sacrifices in order to achieve abundance. For a few years, they have had among them one form of witchcraft, which was invented by the natives of Ibalon after the Spaniards had come. This is the invocation of certain demons, whom they call Nikined, Arapayan, and Makbaruba. They offer to them their sacrifices consisting of coconut oil and crocodile's tooth. This witchery has done a great deal of harm among the Pintados because the demon plays tricks with them. The natives do not have any feasts. Throughout the year, where the married man goes to war, during their absence, the women do not have to work. Next, the rice harvest. They set apart 7 days when they begin to till their fields, in which time they neither grind any rice for their food, nor do they allow any stranger during all that time to enter their villages. They also divided a year into 12 months, but only naming the 7 because the remaining months do not include any work in their field. The 7 months are called lunar months because they are reckoned by moons. The first month is Ulalin, when the Pleiades appears. Second is Dagan Kahoy, the time when trees are felled in order to sow the land. Another month is called Daganenan Bulan, when the wood of those trees is collected from the fields. Next is El Kilin, where they burn over the fields. Inabuyan is when the bonankas blow. Kavay is when they weed their fields. Irarapun is when they begin to harvest the rice. Manululsul is when the harvesting is completed. The natives also believe that the winds come from the sea, which they base on the fact that the sea swells before the wind begins to blow. In this island are many turtles of great size. They are even larger than a shield. When the male and the female have intercourse, they remain joined together for 20 or 25 days. The serpents in this land are enormous and as large as palm trees. However, sluggish. The crocodiles are large in numbers and are called water lizards. There are also civet cats, tabon birds, and cocoa palms. There are many swines and goats of excellent quality. There are also many wild buffaloes, ducks, geese from China, and fowls. For the next chapter, it is going to be discussed by Arvin Camarino.
Thank you for that very informative speech, Miss Amansa Closa. Now, welcome back. I am again Arvin John F. Camarino, and we would be talking about Chapter 11 of Loarca entitled Which Treats of the Rites and Ceremonies Observed by the Moros in the Vicinity of Manila and Their Special Condition. Now, this chapter brings up certain system and practices that was done during the time, namely about Batala, Anitos, government, laws of certain crimes, treats, ceremonies, marriages, and many more that was practiced and followed by the Moros and other social conditions in the vicinity of Manila. Now, Moros worship a deity called Batala, which means God, and according to them, Batala is the great lord that lived in the skies. They said that they adored Batala because he was the lord of all and he had created human beings and villages. Now, Batala has many agents under him to produce. These beings are called anitos that has their own respective offices. There are some for the fields, for those who journey at the sea, for those who went to war, and for diseases. Each anito is named after his office. People offered sacrifice when they desired anything to each one according to the office. Now, the mode of sacrifice was like of the pintados. Sacrifices were made for the anitos and not to Batala because according to the natives, no one could ever speak to Batala and because he is living in the skies. They would summon a Catalonan, which same as Vailan among the pintados are also referred to as the priest. Then they would offer sacrifices requesting for the anito to whatever of the people they may desire, like heaping amount of rice, meat, and fish in an invocation. This would last until the demon enters the body of the Catalonan and would fall into a swoon or extreme emotion and foaming on his mouth. Now, the Indians drank and feasted until the Catalonan came to himself and told them to whatever answer the Anito gave them. If the sacrifice was on the behalf of a sick person, they would offer lots of gold change and ornaments and say that they are playing a ransom for the person's health. Now, this invocation of Anito continued as long as the sickness lasted. According to the natives, as Batala is a great lord and no one can speak to him, the sacrifices were offered to the Anitos instead because again, Batala lives in the sky but Anitos, who was such a nature, came down to talk with men. Now, in some places, especially in the mountain areas where when a relative dies, people unite to create a small wooden idol and preserve it. Now, according to the natives, there is a house which contains 100 or 200 of these idols. Now, additionally, these images are also called as anitos because for them, when a person dies, he would go and serve to Bathala. The native makes sacrifices to the anitos, offering them with food, wine, gold ornaments, then requests them for the intercessors for them to be before Betala, as they refer to them as their god. Accordingly, the Moros lack government. That's why there is a government system that must be followed. They had chiefs in respective districts that must be obeyed by the people. The Moro government also punished certain criminals and laid down laws to be observed. A village has 10 to 12 chiefs, however, only the one of the richest amongst all will be obeyed. When the laws enacted were for governing commonwealth, the greatest chief or of whom the rest obeyed will assemble in his house with all other chiefs in the village. He will then make a speech declaring to correct criminal acts that were then committed. then there would be necessary penalties to be imposed and enact ordinances so that evil will be remedied and peace will be achieved. Now, this policy, however, is not vogue among the Pintados because none of them was willing to recognize another as superior. Accordingly, the chief made such regulations as deemed necessary for these Moros to possess arts of writing, wherein no other natives of the land have. Additionally, there is an umalokhokan or a public crier who is a properly mayordomo or a steward. Now, after an enactment of law, the umalokohan would take a bell and go to village announcing each district of the new regulations made. Then the people would reply that they would obey. Thus, if someone commits penalties to the new regulations, they would be punished accordingly. For instance, if the punishment were death, the culprit may beg for mercy that he may prefer to be a slave, then he would be granted to be a slave over his death. Now, next, we would talk about the marriage ceremonies. Now, Moros follow a marriage ceremonies as same as the Pintados in certain practices giving dowry. Okay, first of the laws of the marriage ceremonies, number one, if a man should contrary to the woman's desire, breaking his pledge and annul the marriage, then he would lose the dowry and she should retain it free from him. Number two, if the wife left the husband, she is obliged to return him the dowry. Number three, if she committed adultery and her husband left him, then she should return him double the amount of the dowry. Number four, if the wife left the husband and marry the other, the second husband is obliged to repay the first husband the dowry which the latter had given to the woman and pay a fine more or less the amount that the judge should order to give him. Number five, if the husband was a chief and caught his wife doing an act of committing adultery, then he would have the right to punish her with death and the adultery also. Now, and could slay them with impunity. If he killed one or the other escaped, then there would be an open war between two families until the other adulterer had died. Now, there are also laws of thieves. A petty theft with the amount of less than 4 days or 20 pesos. However, if anything more than that is seen as a serious offense, he committed the former must return the gold and then he would be sentenced at the will of the judge to pay in the fine of money. If there are a greater thief that stole the amount of 4 days or more, the penalty would be slavery. But if the gold stolen was the amount of kati more, or which is more than a pound of gold, then the penalty would be death, or the environment of the culprit and his children and all in the household would be enslaved. For the first penalties, the penalty was fine in money. The second offense would be slavery, and the third offense would be death. However, if pardoned, he would be a slave with his wife and children. This punishment would not apply of those proven outside of the house, whether dwelling in the house of the culprit or with the relatives. Only those who live in the house of the delinquent were liable for the punishment because they are all suspected of the knowledge of the theft. In business partnerships, both parties must place the amount of same money. Now, if one went to traffic with the money of the two, and while on a trading journey wherein he is captured by an enemy, then the other must go on a ransom to his partner with half of the ransom price agreed upon. The captive was then released from liability, not only what is due to their partnership, but also for the amount which was afterwards given for his ransom, and was not obliged to pay. Now, if one of the party lost the money so large of the amount that he cannot pay for it, then the child will be slaves of the partner. If the delinquent has two child, the one is set free and the other one is a slave. If the other two is free, then the other two is slave. Now, let's talk about the laws governing the killing rules that stated that he who killed the other must die. But if he begged for mercy, he would be a slave of the dead man's family. Now, if 4 or 5 men were concerned in the murder, they would all pay the master of the slave price of which the slave is worth. Then the judge would sentence them to such punishment as he thought just. Now, number 1, if the dead man has a itemagua, the penalty is death by those who is proven as the murderers. But if he begged for mercy, he would become a slave. Number 2, after the sentence, the culprit may choose either death or slavery. Number 3, if the man slayed was a chief, the entire village wherein he was slain, if proven, will all become slaves. Those guilty would be put to death. Entering the house of the chief at night against the will of the owner would also punish to death. There is a custom wherein if the offender was caught first tortured to ascertain whether any chief sent him. If he confesses, he is punished to enslavement, and he who sent him incurred death penalty, but might be released in paying certain amount of gold for the crime. Now, lastly, he who committed adultery, if one of them were a chief, would be punished to death. The same penalty would apply if any man would be caught concubine with the chief. Okay, now, the husband might kill the adultery if caught on act. However, if he escaped, he is condemned to pay a fine in his money until this was done in the enmity between two families concerned. And same laws applies to timaguas. Thank you very much.
The Philippines.